Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the first episode of hopefully many of what I'm calling pair programming. So pretty much it's gonna be me and a guest which I invite, and we're pretty much just gonna build some application, some feature, in and around software engineering, software development, and we're gonna be talking. So it's a mix of kind of a podcast and pair programming. Hopefully it goes well. So the first guest today is a friend of mine. I've known him for quite some time now. We went to the same school together. His name is Mufaro Shumba, and I will hand over the floor to him to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ufar Shimba. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, and today I'll be with Coach. We're going to do a bit of paired programming, and try to hopefully make something cool. And then we also can like share our past experience with each other and do anything along that lines. Thanks for having me, Coach.
Anytime, man, anytime. And thanks for agreeing to come here, man. I really appreciate you being on the first episode of this. Okay, so before we go any further, this is me after the fact, rewatching the entire video that I just recorded, and I see that I made a bunch of blunders, and there are a few things that aren't so good that I want to give you a heads up on. So first off, when it comes to the application itself, I made the mistake of putting the emulator on the side of the screen where mine and Mufaro's images were, so it blocks it off and you don't see a lot of it. So right now I'm gonna show you the application that we built and how it works, etc., etc. So you have that. Um, and then also Mufaro's video, or rather his audio, isn't the best in terms of quality. Hopefully that's something that I can figure out a way to improve that over time for the next video, and the ones after that. But yeah, those are that's the heads up. And let's get back into the video. Okay, so let's get right into it. So one thing I like to do before I build any app is I like to think about all the data models that we can possibly use, right? So since this is a chat application, why don't we think about some of the data models that we would need? So obviously, on one hand, every chat app needs to have a user. So
Yeah.
why don't we come up with a data model for the user object? And this is also another thing that I like to do with all my React projects. So we're just gonna say user. Well, let's do iUser.ts, and then interface iUser. Okay, cool. So now, because the library that we're using for chat, they also have some specific interfaces, or rather some specific models that they have in order to use it. So let's take a look. Let's
Mhm.
consult that while we're creating this. So let's look at
Coach,
the
before we go any
README.
further,
Yeah, go ahead. What's
why
up?
do we use why do we use TypeScript?
Why not? TypeScript is awesome. It's like JavaScript,
Yeah.
but better. But
You
like
say
10
better,
times
but
better. But
come
you've
on,
got you've got you've got some TypeScript horror stories you want to tell us?
no, I just know that I have cheated with TypeScript before, making stuff typeset or not, just so I can get a project done. So
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it works. When it's done right, it works good, but when it's done certain ways,
Yeah.
it's not as good.
I feel
And
you.
it's
I
actually
feel
worse
you.
on JavaScript, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
If I'm not
Sometimes like
mistaken.
I like in some cases where like there's sometimes I find myself wanting to like jump into JavaScript and like not have to worry about, making sure everything is type safe, et cetera, et cetera. Like I don't really like working in a strict TypeScript environment. I usually turn off strict, and then, any colon any is my best friend. Just make it any type,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. But okay, back on topic. So as we can see here in this example, they have like messages, and then, messages is an array of objects that look like this, right? So why don't we just copy this basic thing? I think this is the right way. We're just gonna copy. We're probably gonna do like a ton of copy and paste here. That's gonna be,
Whoa.
that's gonna
I feel you.
be. Why don't you help me get some of these types? I'll start from the bottom. I'll do the ones on top. Uh,
Is Avatar a picture or something?
uh, so avatar, yeah, it's probably gonna be a string. Yeah,
Uh,
there we go. And then this will just
why does it
be,
have two IDs? Oh, okay, never mind.
yeah, I think one is, oh, sorry. So this is, I copied and pasted the wrong thing. So this should
Oh,
be the user right here, right? So the user
okay.
should just have an ID. an avatar, and a name. Yes, that. Oop, I'm making mistakes already. It's gonna take a while to get this down, man. But with teamwork, we're gonna make
Coach,
it through. What's up?
do you not have Prettier installed?
No.
Why would I say? Oh my gosh.
No.
Okay.
This is a
Well,
new machine. Well, relatively new. I've had it for maybe how long have I had this MacBook? Maybe like close to a month now. So I haven't really like installed everything that I typically use.
do you have Homebrew?
That's the first thing I always install when I get a
Mm-hmm.
MacBook homebrew. You use Mac, right, too? You use Mac too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mac Bros. Uh, I can't spell. You laughing because I can't spell interface? Come on now. Okay, cool. So
Oh, okay.
let's get the interface for the message. And so and let's do the same thing. Start from the bottom. You can just import iUser rather than
Yep.
whatchamacallit.
Instead of making this user right.
Yeah. I mean, you're still gonna need the key, but the value you can just change it to iUser,
Mm-hmm.
and then it should do auto import if you do command period. Huh, it's not working. Maybe because the live share or something. Somebody, you should report this to the VS Code team. Tell them that when you're doing live share, it doesn't let you auto import stuff.
I gotta
write
report this to
write
the
them an
VS Code, so
email.
that's gonna be more work for me, Coach. They're gonna say me fix it. No, that's
Oh
not
man,
me,
write them
bro.
an email.
Don't
Take
say anything's broken if it's not on your team.
take
Now
one
you
for
in
the
charge.
team. You know what I'm saying?
Now you in charge. Mm.
Let me
One
just point
time that
out.
I done my first internship, I said,
Yeah,
"Hey, why do the dates on the different web pages um why do the phone numbers not have the right like area codes?" And
yeah,
they said, "Oh, that's a regional issue. So like if you're in America and you're looking at Brazil web page, like a Brazil Azure page or whatever,
yeah,
um, it's gonna have the like 1-800 number because it's localized by your machine." I said, "Shouldn't it have the Brazil phone number?" And then they had me doing a project on trying to fix it.
yeah.
So that's what I got. That's what you call it. It wasn't a
Oh
long project,
Lord.
but it was still like a work item that I wouldn't have to do otherwise. So
Yeah,
ask questions, but don't ask questions that aren't in scope of what your project is.
yeah. You heard it, folks. Don't take on more work than you can handle. Cool. All right. I think that should fix this issue I'm dealing with here. Did you mean import user? Yes, in fact, that's exactly what I meant. I swear to God, without IDEs, man, I'd just be lost.
Yeah, fact.
Thank God for IDEs and auto completion and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Cool. So now we've got our two main models. So we've got a message and we've got our user model. So let's move on to the next thing. Let's go ahead and actually launch the emulator. Uh, so npm run
What we run
iOS.
this on?
So this is,
iOS.
yeah, this is React Native Expo. It makes it a lot easier to do some of this stuff. Let me
Mm-hmm.
switch. I think this just took over your face here. Let me switch it to my other monitor. We'll
I've
put
used the
this
Expo in the
here.
past. You use the app as well on your phone?
Uh, so I barely ever use Expo for like when I'm developing actual projects. But it's really good for like stuff like this when you want to do quick stuff. Just
Yep.
get it and go. That didn't make any sense, but you get the idea. Okay, cool. So we see hello world here. The same thing we see here. Okay, so the first step, let's try and render the chat component right here. So I went ahead and created a kind of like an abstraction of the default chat component that is provided by Gifted Chat. And
Mm-hmm.
so we can pretty much just go ahead and copy this stuff.
Damn, Coach.
What's up?
Where'd you copy this from?
Oh, from the documentation for Gifted Chat.
How?
Yeah. Well, I'm moving too fast for you. Ooh, error messages. They
Uh,
already started. The error messages
what happened
have
to the
already started.
unsigned variable
I
messages?
think it's
Oh, I thought you
TypeScript.
didn't make them yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably it. Or it
Do
also
you have this
might
on
be.
watch? Like, is it on? Is it like every time you save, it'll update?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's every time I
Okay, okay,
save.
yeah, that's what it's doing.
So maybe let me try and control S a bit less. Cool. Let's save this. I feel so silly. A technical mishap just happened. We were having like a great conversation for the last, I don't know, maybe like 8 minutes or so. Hold on, I'm actually timing it. For the last like 9 minutes or so, and then I made a mistake and lost all that footage. But so far, here's where we're at. We've been able to get the general structure of the application, of the chat application here. So you can see here's the place where you type text, and here's like that default message here. So we've put a lot of boilerplate that we pretty much got from the README, and we're moving on. So Mufara was telling me, and I'm not sure if second times around is ruining it, but you were talking about how whatchamacallit, Microsoft was actually not founded in Seattle. It was founded in New Mexico. That's something I definitely didn't know. So there's a fair bit of trivia for those listening. And also one thing we talked about, I asked a question which I think it's important to maybe touch on again, just because your response to it was really good. Was, over at Microsoft on your role right now, what level, how much level of autonomy are you given, versus how much of it is just, here's a guide, do what you're told type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know I said it before, but I'll say it again. With the love, like you're given a project or you're given a, I guess, outline of something that
Mm,
you have to do. Um, that's called a work item. So once you get that work item, you have
mm,
to make sure that the work that you do is quote unquote able to build on the work of others,
yeah.
or um, I forget what else they tell us, but
How
it's
do you
it's
forget the script, man? You forgot this. You're supposed to be promoting Microsoft here, man. Come on. Your manager is watching
uh,
this.
build build on the work of others. One, and then two, uh, be Mufaro and you're good. So knowing those two rules is
Dang it, I
important.
can't
Like
make it. You lost me on the second one.
if you're like on a project and you know that
Yeah.
if you know a different way to implement it than the way your team generally does it, it
Hmm.
might not be the best. The best. It might you might not look the best in your manager's eyes because at the end of the day, the goal is to be able to have as much people be able to look at your code, look at your project, and look at your implementation and understand what's going on.
Hmm.
And one of the easiest ways to do that is keep the same kind of template across the team's project.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
at your age or at your stage, at my stage, we don't really have the chance to influence kind of the template or the culture of the code, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
don't
We're
think culture is the right word, but
yeah.
you won't get to impact the feel of the code.
Yeah, we're pretty much robots, just like
Mm-hmm.
assembly line workers, et cetera, et cetera. But no, that is an important thing that I've seen because, as you know, I've worked in a number of places, and like each company, there's like so many different ways they do things. I think the most important thing is just figuring out the conventions of the team that you're on and sticking to it as much as possible. Because, like, I know in some of the PRs that I've done, it's like, oh, fix this. Too much margin here, too much margin there. Oh, knit, like nitpicks and stuff. Like, ah, yeah, do this, do that, do that. So yeah, it's very important to adhere to all those things. Otherwise, like you'll have a PR with 1,000 comments on it, and it'll take so long for you to check in your code. But okay, cool. So I think at this point we should have pretty much the chat mechanism working. Let's see. There we go. Much better. So you can see, you can get an idea of how this would work when you have like users with different user IDs, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I think we should do is we should add a nav bar to this. I think it'll make it look much better. Let's
Okay, so
go here to the chat
any specific
page.
nav bar you have inside in mind? User React.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
basically
So
everyone in.
this is the uh, this is the UI library that I downloaded, and I use this UI library a lot, even when I build like actual apps and stuff like that. And so let's find the navbar component. Let's see. So another question for you: how much of what you've been doing so far, um, that you've been working at Microsoft, compare it pretty much to, the stuff you do when you interview at different companies, like the kind of interview questions they ask versus the work you were actually doing at a company like Microsoft.
Uh, yeah, I mean interviews. once you, depending on the company, it depends really. Um, so yeah, I'm at Microsoft, but I did my interviews, like my real official interviews, were actually back at in like 2018 for my internship. I just got return offers. So
Mm,
that interview was a lot of it was a little bit of coding, but it was still like I was a sophomore at the time, so it's not really um, representative of what I've done. But I can say that at when I interview at other companies, not
mm.
saying that I do Microsoft when you're watching this, but if I'm interviewing at other companies, a lot of a lot of those interviews are those technical coding interviews,
Mm,
except for um, maybe Stripe was different.
mhm,
Uh, I feel like their interview process is slightly more tailored towards like the actual job experience.
mm,
You're going to be doing uh, conversations as you're coding. You're going to be given, um, I guess, like a whole project in front of you, and you're going to be asked to um, modify it and make sure it runs and make your own tests. And I mean, testing is a part of every interview, but like the interviews right now are trying to be like I think they're shifting into a bit more of that. Like not as much of gotcha, but how much you can think on the fly, and if someone gives you an added specification, are you able to follow up with it and make
mm.
sure that it is you know
Mm,
not something that's gonna like break your code.
mm. Yeah, one
Like I
thing.
can give a quick example of
Yeah, go
this.
ahead.
Um, let's say you're asked to take the square root of a number
Mm,
and you code it up, take a square root of an integer, whatever. And then they ask you to take the square root of a decimal, and
yeah.
like now you stuck in limbo, like you can't do that. So it's one of those things. Or if you're like asked to take a square root of something that's not a perfect square, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, and I haven't done. I don't know. I've done a decent amount of technical interviews, but nothing crazy. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of the stuff they ask of you, it's just almost never related to like you're never gonna be reversing a linked list on the job. You're never
yep,
gonna be inverting a binary tree, or all this other ridiculous stuff that they ask. Usually, there's you're probably not gonna go any further than the standard template library of whatever language it is that you're using.
yep,
Most of the time. Some cases, like there'll always be those rock star, people who are inventing new algorithms and doing all this fancy stuff, but the average guy, the average Joe is not gonna do anything like that. So now I think we're pretty much ready to start working a bit on the back end. In order to make things easy for us, like I said earlier, I added Firebase into the project, and we're going to use it to manage our backend. In case you don't know, Firebase is a module. Well, it's not a module. It's a software as a service platform. It allows you to use things like a database, which we're going to use in this video, authentication, and a lot of other features they offer. We're not going to go through all of them in this video, but Firebase is definitely worth checking out. This is the landing page right here. So this is pretty much what the database would look like. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a new collection user. So the Firebase is a document style data. Have you worked with document style databases in the past before?
do you have any examples?
MongoDB.
Probably not. Nope.
Okay, I see. Pretty much the way it works is like we've got these things called collections and documents. And document database is a type of no SQL database, so you don't have like strict all the rules that you have to deal with SQL, like defining a schema, yada yada yada, all that stuff. But yeah, it's a NoSQL database, and you have collections and documents. So documents live inside collections, and you can query collections. You can fetch brain fart. You can fetch individual documents once you have their ID and a bunch of other nifty stuff. So let's see. So the name, the avatar, we already have the ID from Firebase would give us an ID, so we don't need to add that in here. So this is AVATAR. Let's save that. I already can anticipate an issue we're gonna have with the ID because the library that I created what it does is when it fetches Firebase documents, it automatically sets an ID key, but because gifted
Mhm.
chat expects underscore ID, but the one I wrote is like just ID, that could be a challenge, but nothing a bit of data mapping won't fix. So do you get to do a lot of front end things in your current role at Microsoft?
Um, Let me think. Right now, not as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a lot based on like Azure products.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't get to build out the front end. A lot of it is basic. It's more of emphasis on the services that are used.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where a lot of my time is spent.
Can you get a bit more specific in like some of the things you do day to day, et cetera, et cetera?
So to cut this part out, I don't actually work. I sit on my computer and look at the screen. For, usually, currently, um, I'm doing preparation for like some certification courses. So that's not really like work, but it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be part of my job. I now have a project coming up with the Azure bot framework, I think it's called,
Yeah.
where I'll be playing around with that, the version 2 of that bot
Yeah.
before it releases,
Yeah.
and I'll be trying to, test it out and I think debug it early,
Okay.
find out some errors with it, and provide, I don't know, key recommendations on how it can be used for specifically students.
And so, like, I'm guessing you target a lot of universities, like colleges, et cetera, et cetera. Is that the only domain that your team is focusing on, or are you trying to get Azure in other places, or
Um,
get Azure
I mean,
users in other institutions?
my specific team is university based.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's other teams that are like startup based and industry based,
Okay. I see.
like our sister teams
I
in this
see.
way.
Okay.
But,
Division of labor, divide and conquer.
mm-hmm.
I dig it. I dig it. So this is another reason why I don't really like TypeScript. Well, technically, this is more of a poor design in my part, or I guess our part. We're doing this with me, but I'm gonna have to make this any. Type any. Okay, cool, and then
Okay.
save this here. All right, cool. So what I'm doing now is fetching the user from the database. So that means I could probably get rid of this. Oop, error, crash, crash, crash. It's complaining about a lot of stuff. So let's get rid of this because user 2 no longer exists. Um, and then let's also, because we're fetching the user and it's an asynchronous operation, we're gonna need to like show some progress indication while the user is loading. So I'm gonna say if not user, and because JavaScript is falsy, I can leave it, or has truthy and falsy values. I can leave it at that. So if not user, return, and we're not gonna do anything fancy. We can do like a loading spinner, but
Mm-hmm.
that's more fancy than I'm willing to do right now. Text and just say. So if what I did worked, we should, when I reload this, why is this not reloading? What's going on here? Yeah, so if you saw there, there was that loading. I'll refresh it again. RR. Why is this not doing what I expected to do? Okay, there's another way to do this. Device, shake. There we go. Reload. So yeah, you can see that loading text. That's pretty much what this is. So whenever before as we're fetching, that way we make sure that the user is always available and we don't, we're not passing in a null value. So now we're fetching the user from the database. So now let's try when we send a
Coach,
message. Yeah, what's up?
why do both messages have the same ID again?
Uh, that's a good question. They shouldn't have the same ID technically.
We're getting hacked. That's how you get hacked.
That's exactly how you get hacked. When you let bugs like that into your code, uh, you know, stuff gets real. Uh, okay. So I think I don't want to keep you much longer than you need to. I know we talked
Mhm.
about an agreed upon point to end this. And you're a busy man. Don't want to take much of your time. But yeah, I really think this went a lot better than I was thinking from the beginning. And again, the point of this is not so much the code that we're writing. So even though we didn't get to finish what we were doing, the point is more so the conversation. And I think we had a great conversation throughout. So
Mhm.
yeah, and hopefully as I continue doing this, is like the first time we're doing it. And again, I just want to say thank you for agreeing to be in the first episode of this. But hopefully as time goes on, as I'm getting the hang of, what's doable in a certain amount of time versus what isn't, et cetera, this should get better and better. So yeah, before we go, why don't you just, I know you do a lot as far as, things on the internet, social media, et cetera. So why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you, whether it's IG, LinkedIn, et cetera, and, do a little cute outro for us.
Yeah, so you can find my premium content on LinkedIn. If you just type in my name before Shumba, you're gonna see me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find me there.
Don't forget
Yeah,
the
that's
IG
about it.
too. No. I'm not gonna let you slide. You do stuff on IG too. Let's talk about the
No, no,
IG.
no. Don't. If I put my IG up there, certain people will find it, and certain people just find Twitter.
Not even the stuff you do with photography. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, photography. I also do photography. On Move Shots, MUFSHOTS
Hmm.
.me, and you can find my IG on that website as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a new hobby of mine. So yeah,
Yeah, you're pretty good so far. I've seen some of the things you've done, a few of the pictures. Even though you didn't invite me, for that one thingy,
Oh, never
you
mind.
invited Maurice, but you didn't invite me. Come on, what's up with that, huh? I got you live in 4K, live in 4K. Explain yourself now.
I was gonna invite. I was gonna invite Maurice, but he said he was on the way,
Yeah.
and he was on the way, so I had to cancel it.
Excuses, excuses. But anyways, man, yeah, thanks again for joining us, and thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, peace out.
See you.